And I'm gonna go it on and get started. Torrie Wilson. She was one of the most underrated WWE divas of the 2000s. The crowd adored her. To me, she went under the radar as one of the best utilized talents in the early 2000s. The Boise, Idaho native was originally a fitness competitor before taking her talents to the squared circle. Torrie Wilson knows what it takes to look the part and be the part, and she would go on to have a lengthy career before retiring in 2008. This week on Wrestling Quick Take, I will be talking about the career of Torrie Wilson, along with some of her greatest matches, well, not matches, but greatest moments, plus talking about her life after wrestling. So let's do it. Torrie's career. According to BleacherReport.com, a stunning blondie bombshell who made a name for herself in the dying days of WCW. Torrie Wilson made her WWE debut in June of 2001 and wasted very little time becoming one of the most popular divas in company history. Wilson became one of the faces of the WWE Divas roster during what many consider the golden age of women's wrestling in the company. She was hardly the most skilled wrestler of the lot, delivering her best work in the gimmick matches that kept fans entertained between big matches. Still, still, she always appeared to be having fun, and the fact that she was drop dead gorgeous helped maintain her popularity. One of the biggest one of the biggest benefactors of the brand extension, Wilson was one of SmackDown's franchise players. Her image placed her right next to Brock Lesnar, The Rock, and Kurt Angle on marketing materials, and the exposure she garnered on the brand helped her land an appearance in Playboy magazine on two separate occasions. It is incredibly difficult to become the centerpiece of an entire division, yet that is exactly what Wilson accomplished. During the early to mid 2000s, every major Divas feud on the SmackDown brand involved her, and with good reason. She was incredibly over and unquestioned female star of the show. It would have been a mistake to neglect her when WWE began to drop the overt sexuality of the divas from the broadcast and turn more towards traditional wrestling matches. Talent such as Wilson suffered the most. There was no way to hide the fact that she was inferior to the likes of Michelle McCool, Mickey James, Melita, Beth Phoenix, and Lita, and her weakness became exposed rather quickly. Excuse me. By 2007, with the landscape changing rapidly, Wilson opted to depart from WWE. Me talking about her WCW career now. Wilson made her pro wrestling debut in 1999 during a storyline in which she appeared as a seductress for David Flair. She would she would accompany the second generation star to the ring for a while, even appearing at ringside with him when he won the United States Championship. After turning on the naive young man, she joined the Filthy Animals and became closely associated with Billy Kidman both on and off the screen. In July 2000, she became the valet for the franchise Shane Douglas, rediscovering her inner heel and helping him to torment Kidman on a seemingly weekly basis. In September at Fall Brawl, she and Douglas met Kidman and Medusa in a dangerous scaffold match. A month later, she teamed with Douglas to meet Kidman and Tigress in an awful mixed tag team match at Halloween Havoc. By the time 2000 reached its conclusion, Wilson disappeared from WCW television. Conclusion. So, Torrie Wilson, I mean, before she even came to WWE, obviously made a name for herself, and she turned herself into quite the talent, you know. And fitness is a great way to go. Fitness is a great start, and you know, she took her talent from fitness into the square circle, and she did pretty well for herself. And I think her best work was in WCW. I mean, not to take anything away from her WWE run. I mean, her WWE run was still pretty good, but I felt her best work was in WCW. Tori's greatest versions, or should I say, versions of Tori. Normally, I would call these moments, but here I'm going to call these versions of Torrie Wilson. Beginning with number one, managing David Flair. The start of Torrie Wilson's career in wrestling featured her working closely with David Flair. Kevin Nash brought Wilson in through a mutual friend when believing she'd be a good fit for the wrestling business. WCW needed to add some women to the roster, and Torrie was a good fit. The first few months were a bit rough as Wilson didn't have much acting experience. WCW thankfully gave her a lot of time to get her through this angle and continue improving afterwards. Number two, alliance tag team with Stacy Keibler. There were not too many heel runs for Torrie Wilson in WWE since she connected so strongly as a face character. Wilson paired up with Stacy Keibler during their first few months in WWE as heels in the alliance faction of WCW and ECW talents. The rivalry of Torrie and Stacy versus Trish Stratus and Lita had a positive result, since all four women were viewed as major stars. Wilson did well since had great chemistry with Keebler, but WWE turned her face as one of the first alliance wrestlers to join WWE due to her bigger upside in that role. Number 3, Shane Douglas manager. WCW signing Shane Douglas saw them struggling to find an ideal role for him in the final years of the company's existence. ECW made Douglas the top heel with Francine. Of course, many of you know who Francine was, as his manager for the perfect chemistry. Torrie Wilson was placed with Douglas, hoping to replicate the same success of Francine. The chemistry wasn't as strong, but they did have a few high profile feuds. Wilson continued to prove her charisma in the early stages of her career. Number 4, joining the Filthy Animals. The Filthy Animals was one of the most underrated WCW factions when starting in 1999. Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman, and Conan brought their real-life friendship to the screen with the fun act providing great matches. Torrie Wilson was the missing piece that added another dynamic when becoming the love interest of Billy Gunn. Not Billy Gunn, Billy Kidman. Wow. The first face run for Wilson in wrestling allowed her to work with some of the best talents while finding her groove with the ideal character role. Number 5. Face of SmackDown's women's division. The in-ring aspect of wrestling was admittedly not Torrie Wilson's best skill, but she tried her best when placed in the role. SmackDown had a weaker women's division in the original brand split, since they didn't even have a women's championship like Raw at the time. Torrie's popularity was strong enough to carry all women's division segments at the time when the blue brand. At the time on the blue brand. Excuse me, why do I keep stuttering? SmackDown often featured bikini contests that always saw Wilson having the biggest pop to win. Torrie had noteworthy programs against Dawn Marie and Sable at the height of her career. What is Torrie Wilson doing now? So you are probably wondering what Torrie Wilson is doing now. So I will explain. According to essentiallysports.com, Torrie Wilson was one of the most charismatic characters during the Ruthless Aggression era, and the fans loved her. Unfortunately, in 2008, the Blondie Bombshell quit WWE after 9 successful years because of her back injury. It was a devastating time for her fans, but Torrie Wilson was not done yet. After her back surgery, Torrie Wilson got back into fitness and launched a website called Torrie Wilson Fit.com. Through this, she wanted to reach out and help other women get into shape. The 42-year-old is an athlete, a model, an entrepreneur, and a health advocate. She is always the CEO. She's also the CEO of Fitnessity, which a health and wellness site, and we know her health tips are practical because Wilson looks as good as she did back in her WWE days. Besides her career, Torrie Wilson has been doing well. Personally, Tool she got married to Justin Tuber, who was her long-term partner and Revolution Golf CEO. She revealed that she got married in an Instagram post, calling her husband the most incredible human. Last part, and then we're done. Torrie's Hall of Fame speech restriction. According to itwrestling.com, Torrie Wilson has opened up about not being able to mention a certain former WWE superstar by name during her Hall of Fame induction speech. A member of the 2019 Hall of Fame class, Torrie Wilson spoke about her own induction during a virtual signing for the Asylum Wrestling store. Recalling her induction speech, Wilson revealed that at the last minute, she was warned not to mention former WWE Women's Champion Sable. You're not even allowed to mention her name on. She was I mentioned I mentioned her name in my Hall of Fame speech, and right before they told me, "Oh, by the way, you're not allowed to mention her name." Wilson also joked that if any fans wanted to get Sable's autograph, they would have to track her down in Timbuktu. Sable famously lives with her husband Brock Lesnar in a sprawling ranch in Merrifield, Saskatchewan, in Canada. Of course, I don't know how to pronounce that, but although they did previously live in Minnesota, good luck seeing her. You're gonna have to go up Timbuktu in Minnesota to get Sable's autograph. Torrie Wilson will be remembered for her grit, drive, and toughness. Just her overall love for the business. It sucks that WCW had to close its doors because I think she would have made a perfect women's champion in WWE. Today, Torrie Wilson is taking her health very seriously, but also trying to help others do the same thing. At the end of the day, you can't argue with that. Well, that's all for this week's show. And until next week, God bless. So, what do you think about Torrie Wilson? I mean, where would you put her in terms of the route Mount Rushmore of women in WWE history? I mean, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And until next time, guys, God bless.